Hi, my name's Dave Smith, and 57 years ago I joined the Ottawa Fire Department. It was an interesting time for me. It was my 19th birthday, January 4th, 1960. And I was fortunate enough to join with 33 other fellas, many of whom have been lifelong friends. And we came on to, the shift was being reduced from 56 hours to 48. So we were brought on to make sure that happened smoothly. Our first stations, well, I think what I'd like to say is in 1960 we made less than $3,000 a year, which is a little phenomenal right now when you think that they're probably making that a week. I don't know, but anyways, it was $3,000 for the year. We worked the 5-day week at training center when we first came on, and it was January 4th of 1960, and it was damn cold, and we worked outside and with bare hands and catching hydrants and laying water and doing all sorts of ladder evolutions. The chief at the time, with Chief Dix, was the head of training, and Nick Ostopic was his assistant. He taught us first aid, and they brought in a captain at the time, Roy Duncan, who was a suppression officer and helped with the class because it was so big. It was interesting getting to know everyone. I was 19 years old at the time and didn't have a clue about what the fire department was worth or like, and enjoyed every minute of it for the next 42 years. We started at a very interesting time. The rules were then you had to be 5'8", I believe, and you had to weigh at least 145 pounds. And although I don't look it right now, I weighed 139 pounds at the time when I came on, and had to drink about 1.5 gallons of water to get over the weight limit. So it was interesting. You had to be a resident of the city of Ottawa for 2 years before you could be hired. And that was a very interesting case because there was a number of people living off Fisher Avenue and out in Pine Glen area, which was outside the city at the time in Nepean, and they were given letters that if they didn't move within the city in a month or so, they would be fired. It just so happened that one of our war vets, Kenny O'Connor, took the case and got a lawyer and went to court and ended up in the Canadian Supreme Court, where they won the case because he had been given Veterans Land Act land in Nepean. So it was sort of discriminating against a war veteran. And when we came on, most of the guys that were on 10-15 years were all war vets. And they talk today about PTSD. Well, these guys were suffering from that, from the war. And some of them had drinking problems, and some of them had emotional problems, and some of them were just fine. But when they told you to shit, you cut your braces. They didn't fool around. You took orders or went out in the backyard with them, and that's how it sort of worked out. You did what you were told, and to me that was a good way. But I don't think it would pass today, in today's world, that you would get away with that kind of stuff. But my first fire was I had just been sent out to number 11 station for the day because I was being transferred the next day, And I had been at number 10 station on Sunnyside Avenue, and we had a few small fires, nothing big. And I went to number 11 station. And one of the tricks the guys pulled on me that day, when I just a rookie coming in there, they said, "You can't sit at the big table, Dave, but we have a guest coming in, and you'll have to sit at this card table with our guest." The fella's name was Eugene, and he was a local guy that dropped in the station all the time, and he had a runny eye with pus running down his face, and sitting across from him eating spaghetti was a little challenging for a young kid. But that's the type of little humor that they played on the rookies. I got a fire that night and it just so happened that I had met up with my cousin, Lauren Lytle, and we were both on the job about 5 months when we caught the fire at Boyd Security down in the flats. And in those years, the early 60s and 70s, they were doing urban renewal in Lower Town, and they were cleaning out down in the LeBreton Flats area. So what happened was we got an awful lot of fires. Some of them were amazing. I recall a few fires, but one that stands out is the juvenile court. I was at number 10 station when the juvenile court blew up in 1963. And the building was just under construction. I think it had only been opened that week. And when we pulled up, I got off the rig and walked into the area and just walked in through the wall. I thought that they hadn't finished the construction at the time, but the building had blown out the wall, and we went down the basement. They asked us, a couple of us, to go over and shut off a valve that was leaking a little gas. So when we went over to that area, I remember a stone or a piece of cinder falling off the ceiling and hitting me on the helmet, and I thought the big guy had wanted to take me upstairs with him. I thought I was done for. It scared the crap out of me. So it was very, very interesting times. Some of the fires that we had were amazing. There was the Dominion Church fire, and like I said before, Boyd Security, and in the first 10 years on the job, we were running like crazy all through Lower Town, because I eventually ended up at number 3 station down on it was on Laurier Avenue up at Waller. So during my career, I was at 3 number 3 stations, and 3 number 7 stations, and 2 number 5 stations. So I went through a few stations over the years, but it's been a very interesting career, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Some say it's a job, some say it's a career. I happen to think it's a calling. I've loved the fire department, and what I would suggest to anybody that happens to be still watching this thing is that you get involved in the department. I got involved in a number of committees, and was I was a shop steward, and I was a credit counselor with the Ottawa Firefighters Credit Union. I was with the Recreational Association, which I became president of that, and was involved quite a bit with curling over the years. And I think there's about 20-some committees that I was on. At the end, I was on the Amalgamation Committee, the Critical Incident Stress Committee, the Ambulance Amalgamation Committee. So get yourself involved and enjoy the job. We didn't make enough money to just sit back and only do that job. We had to work part-time on the side, and I did a lot of house painting and stuff like that, and moving, and menial jobs, but lots of fun because you're with your brother firefighters, and I guess now it's brothers and sister firefighters. And I had a wonderful career. I spent some time with a class in the training center in 1983, just when I got my captaincy, and that was a lot of fun, teaching other people the skills to do the job. And I've stayed in pretty close touch with those kids over the years. I guess they're not kids anymore, but got involved with the ROFA Association, and also got involved with the Memorial Committee, and that built the monument down at Ottawa City Hall, and it's turned out to be a pretty good. I happened to be the fundraising chair for this committee, and over the years we've raised $1.4 million to build the monument, and it's I'm very proud to have been involved in that. I worked through the ranks and ended up as the deputy chief for Gary Richardson, and there isn't a job on the fire department that I didn't enjoy, from firefighter to senior man to lieutenant to captain to district chief, all the way through it. It's been a wonderful experience, and I wish all the future firefighters and firefighters who are watching this, if they have half the career that and fun that I had on this department, God bless you, and stay safe out there, and thank you very much for listening. We're talking about PTSD and the firefighters, and I think every firefighter experiences post-traumatic stress disorder. I happen to have been on the advisory committee for the critical incident stress team, and some of the stories we've heard are pretty grueling, in that we sent people down to Peggy's Cove, and they were trying to retrieve pieces of body out of the river, and the seagulls were flying away with hands and stuff like that. Those kind of things have to affect everyone, and I can go back and I can remember trying to do CPR on a guy on Harvey Avenue, and the skin came off in my hands when I was doing CPR on him. And the thing that really recalled, I remember the Chief Hoffman walking out with the baby in his arms who had died on the 3rd floor. And when I went up into that room and you looked at the sheet, and the sheet was all black except the image of the baby was still there. Those kind of things. Another fire we had where I was driving Merv Wilson down in Overbrook, and the father had thrown the kids through the window and then drove through himself, and his wife had wanted to get dressed or something before she went out, and she opened the window and collapsed right there, and that was bad. But when we went in the bathroom and found a little 5-year-old wrapped around the toilet trying to hide, those kinds of things are always with you. And if I can say to anyone who has had these things happen to them, if you realize that stress is affecting you, that's okay, because stress is supposed to affect you. But what some people don't, they try to deny it, that this is bothering them, and these things do bother you, and they stay with you. Here I am 57 years later talking about some of them, and they stay with you, but there's not anything you can do about it. You're the one that really was involved. You saw it, and unfortunately you saw it, but that's the game we're in, and people die, and we didn't start the fires, and we tried to put them out to the best of our abilities. And hopefully you don't get to see too many of these things, but they stay with you. One thing a firefighter needs is family and support. And I've been fortunate in my career to have support from my wife and my family, and it's been wonderful to be able to share. A lot of firefighters come home after a bad time and don't want to talk about it. And I think one thing I learned from being on the advisory committee for the critical incident stress team was that you do have to share your thoughts and your feelings with people when you see something terrible. You're up.
I think in our case, it's been very true. We've been able to communicate enough to get the stress out and enjoy life. Being a firefighter, time off, more days in sequence than other departments, so we've used it to our advantage.
Yes, we've certainly done some fine traveling for sure, and seen a lot of the world and a lot of the country, and we've enjoyed our time together.
We've also been very blessed with our children, being that it's a blended family. It hasn't given us any heartache. In fact, it has given us a lot of pleasures. And so we're lucky.
Yeah. Also our friends. I've had friends on the fire department for 57 years, and they're still very close. And although we're all getting older and stumbling around, but we meet for lunch. We're involved with the ROFA Association, which is a wonderful group. What we wanted to do with ROFA when we first started it was to get the wives involved, and now it's the wives and husbands involved. But when one partner passes away, to have a place for the other person to know what's going on within the fire department. And the ROFA webpage, of course, has been a blessing for that.
That's a telephone alarm reporting a house fire, 87 Bernard Street, between Thomas Street and Castor Park. For engine 16, engine 17, quit midi 7, battalion 2, rescue 11, truck 10 is the wreck car 99. That's a report of a house fire with several calls, report of the possibility of somebody still inside 87 Bernard Street, between Thomas and Castor Park. Now for the deputy and the protective.
That old alarm was sounding, and he knew he had to go. But all he could think about were his little girls at home. He signed on to this job, yeah, to help the ones in need. But every time he ran into that fire, he knew he might not leave. He doesn't want any money for the things he trained to do. He wants to help the ones in need. He wants to see the whole